just wanted to do a quick mic check. Can you guys hear me?
Great. You say that one more time?
Can you hear me? 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah. It's like it's a really weird voice for some reason.
Uh-oh.
It's like a chipmunk voice or something.
It's not good. I dropped my
Is
mic. Maybe that's what happened.
Um. Yeah. It might be. It's like no worries, Jenny. Thank you. Anjali, can you hear us from Zoom?
I can hear you fine, but Kashif is like has a high pitched like chipmunk
Yeah.
voice.
Talking about like I hate me.
Okay.
Is there like a filter on your voice or
It's
something?
like a chipmunk, chipmunk. You know, like one of those ratatouille voice or something. That's what it kind of sound like.
Oh God. Maybe I put the cat filter on the voice part. I didn't know Zoom had that.
That's hilarious.
What a day. I hope the Twitter Space voice is better. Can you guys give a thumbs up or a heart on Twitter Space if it's okay there?
I can't really understand what you're saying because it's really high pitched.
Like I don't believe Twitter Spaces. They give you a thumbs up on Twitter Space. Let me go on the Twitter Space.
Okay, so it looks like Twitter Spaces is working.
Okay, well, let me check with first.
I'm gonna redo my. I'm going to invite up Dan.
Oh, now it's working.
Oh, good. Okay. So on the Twitter Spaces, I'm going to invite up Dan, who's going to be our guest speaking today. He's a lawyer who practices in Calgary. And he's been a keen leader, and especially when it comes to the legal aspects of worker safety and other aspects of the pandemic. So I really wanted to get Dan to speak to us about some of the things that he's been working on, and then we're also going to go over, some of the issues like bug fixes and some of the progress we made in the app so far. So just before Dan comes on, I'm just going to show you like the amazing progress we've made just in the last few days. So in just 1 week, we've added 96 cities or regions, 9 countries, 358 data points, about 400 regular users, and that is incredible growth for something that's not even in the app stores. So thank you, all of you, for your amazing contributions. We're seeing real network effects in some of the places where there's lots of users, and we're seeing thankfully a lot of people sharing links to the app, talking about air quality more in conversations on Twitter. And so hopefully this will keep continuing, and hopefully we'll continue to see growth. There was a funny moment this morning. I realized that I almost exhausted almost all of Google's free quota for hosting. I was working all weekend, so I didn't have time to update the billing on it. So the app almost went down by mistake, but it was the changeover of the month on August 1st that saved us. So thank God for that. So that won't happen again, hopefully. Some interesting insights that have come from the app so far. Like, we've identified some genuinely interesting situations regarding CO2 levels. So there was a concert coming up in Toronto August 1st. At the venue, had a fairly high CO2 reading on one reading. So, maybe there might be a potential, save Weird Al or save other artists that we can try to do in other cities and venues where artists are going to perform. Presumably, these artists don't want to be sidelined for weeks or days with a COVID infection. So that's an idea that we can try pursuing. Based on your feedback in Discord and on Twitter, these are some of the bugs. We've fixed some of them over the weekend, and we'll tackle the rest. Please try to use the hashtag COVIDCO2 when you're reporting results. We're going to add more categories like health and wellness locations, doctors' offices, massage places, fitness, recreation, gyms, yoga studios. Thinking of also adding a patio restaurant category so that you can try to find, we can quickly build a list of outdoor patio restaurants for people who live in the city. And the other thing is, we're going to incorporate a video on how to contribute readings into the map app. There is a tutorial in the map itself if you go to the question mark at the top of the app itself. There's some profile creation bugs that we fixed, and adding new readings. We're going to fix that bug. Has been fixed over the weekend. So share links aren't working, and we're going to work on that too. We're also going to try to use some of the social media features of the app to try to work on an authoritative list of top experts for monkeypox. So please nominate the best possible sources that you can find. Especially prioritize people in Africa who've really had the most experience fighting monkeypox so far. There's been some interesting info coming from there. So yeah, just contribute, and we'll look forward to building a good authoritative list that we can showcase to everybody. So why don't we go? So Dan, how are you doing?
I'm good. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you just fine.
Yeah, I just had to go and actually enable the mic in my Twitter app. I had a moment of panic where
So yeah, we've been working together in Master Canada for a couple of years now. Like, how's it looking in Calgary these days?
Calgary was doing okay, and then we had Stampede, and now it definitely, cases, according to the wastewater cases, seem to be going up. In terms of the indoor air quality movement, as across the country, there's not a lot of official support for it, but there's a strong grassroots movement of people who understand the issue, who are advocating for it and trying to push for better indoor air quality, particularly in the schools. And I know that we have a lot of support amongst teachers in the Calgary Board of Education. So, the slow boring of hardboards is, as Hillary Clinton put it, is what's going on here. Is we're slowly trying to make a little bit of progress. I think we got spoiled a couple of years ago about how fast it was to get massive mandates everywhere, and I think it kind of set our expectations about how easy or not it would be to make progress. But certainly on the indoor air quality, generally the powers that be don't want to hear about it yet, but we're hoping that will change.
I'm looking at the readings in Calgary on the map, and there's quite a few, and some of them are quite interesting, like over 2,000 at one church. Have you had any success sort of on the worker safety aspect? Like, how smoking bans didn't come along because of the link to cancer, but it came sort of as a worker safety measure, starting in New York and spreading from there. Is there any angle to take on that you see could be successful?
So in theory, yes, which is under the Occupational Health and Safety Act in every province. Workers have the right to refuse work in unsafe conditions. And that then will sort of force the issue on the safe or an unsafe condition. But it's kind of a chicken and an egg, because you put yourself at risk. You have to demonstrate that something is unsafe, and then you can be put to different duties, and then an investigation has to happen. But it really boils down to what standard are you acting towards when you say something is safe or not. And I just want to clarify, I'm not actually an expert in this area. I know just enough about it to be dangerous, but it's not the area of law that I'm practicing in, and please don't take anything that I'm saying as legal advice or even, the gospel truth about what the state of the law is, because people who are more experts in that will have, a much better sense of that. But just, from my knowledge of what the OHS acts in each province say.
That's, do you see anything improving over time?
I think that there are definitely cases like the ones that revealed a lot of the advice that our Chief Medical Officer of Health was giving to the government. I think, as people are willing to put themselves out there to do the class actions, to have, the private tort claims, yes, but the law moves slowly.
We had a question from one of this audience. Is how did you get collaborations with the Calgary School Board, and how can other people replicate it in other cities and countries?
we didn't get actually collaboration with the school boards. It's been an uphill battle with the school boards. It's been, teachers who get it, will sometimes, you can put an air filter into a room and it's just arguing. And I think private schools have done better than public schools because there's less bureaucracy. But no, I don't want to leave the impression that we've had cooperation from the schools.
So you're kind of dragging them kicking and screaming. Like, what do you do? Like, do you get your teacher on board first and work up from there?
You get your teacher, you get your principal. You just have to be annoying, and you're not always going to be successful because you are fighting a large bureaucracy. And certainly, what we found when we did a Freedom of Information request, which is something that I would highly recommend that you do because all public school boards are subject to freedom of information legislation, is that there are all kinds of internal discussions as to how they can delay, how they can put it off, because it costs a lot of money, and certainly they're of the belief, well, the pandemic is over, so we don't really need to deal with it. So that's the mindset that you're up against. But it seems like in the States, some places are actually turning. If I'm not mistaken, I believe both Boston and Denver are now looking at air quality monitoring. I'm not sure of that, but I think that's what's happening.
Well, that would be something if they did, like real-time monitoring using the monitors. Some of the monitors is possible. Like you can have data go straight from one of the AirNet Pro models, I think, straight to anywhere else that can monitor them. So it hopefully it's something that can be scaled up. But like you said, it's the bureaucracy, and the bureaucratic impulse is to basically do nothing, right? And we're dealing with sort of the after effects of people thinking that everything is just peachy.
Yeah, I think you probably will have more success in private schools just because there's fewer layers of bureaucracy, and if you can convince the right people, it's easier for them to make changes in one school.
So you make a breakthrough in one. That's exactly how we got the mask mandates in Canada. You had a breakthrough in one city, and then you can try to extend it to other places. So that is a great way to go about it.
Yeah, I think it's one of these things that's going to happen really slowly.
Sorry, you got blurred there for a second.
I think it's the sort of thing that's going to happen very slowly and then all at once.
Yeah, it just takes a few. It's like what we found is that good ideas, especially when people are personally concerned about the health of themselves and their children, tend to move very quickly when the conditions are right. You just need to show people that it can be done.
Yeah.
Okay, Jessica just came up to speak. How are you doing?
Hi, great, thank you so much. I wanted to ask, what should I ask for in a Freedom of Information request?
So it depends who you are familiar with too, because you'll have your form, but if you go too broad, that is not the card per page. So, we
school board.
So, to a school board, can we have the records of any deliberations with respect to ventilation?
Okay.
To the response, what responses have been made, to parents who have requested it. And the person that actually I suggest you get in touch with on Twitter is Amanda, who is the one who did the FOI request at Alberta Book of Education.
Are you guys familiar with Muckrock?
No. What is that?
Muckrock is I don't know if it works for Canada too, but it certainly works here. It's certainly designed for here in America. It's a platform for filing, managing, and following up with your FOIA requests. I've been using it for quite a long time. Many journalists have been using it for quite a long time. It's not free. It's like $20 a pop. But they will follow up on them for you. They will centralize them. They will host all the documents. Basically everything. I've hit one or two bugs over the past year, but I filed like 10 FOIA requests with them. And if it weren't for them, I would have never been able to keep track of all of the denials and the delays and all of that has come with COVID FOIA requests.
Where were you making your FOI request? Where were you making the FOI requests?
Like I made one. Well, I made a bunch. So one to the City Department of Health here in New York City, one to the Mayor's office, one to the State Department of Health. Basically, the original thing I was trying to get was the data for restaurant COVID ventilation mitigations. Because back when they reopened the restaurants, the politicians made a big deal about, hey, we've improved all the air. They all have MERV 13 filters and everything is great. And meanwhile, I could see, like, with my own eyes at my favorite pizza place that they still had, like, MERV 3 filters. And so I knew back then that this was complete bullshit. And there has to be some sort of data that shows how many people are actually doing any of this stuff. So I originally FOIA'd the health department saying, like, hey, do you have any just compiled statistics or any inspection reports of restaurants to see if they're in compliance? And that started a year-long journey for which I still have not gotten the data. They've been kicking the ball, like the Department of Health said, oh yeah, we do restaurant, but we don't actually have that data. The mayor's office has that data especially for some reason. Then I FOIA'd the mayor's office, and then they keep delaying it every 2 weeks. And I FOIA'd the State Department of Health because the governor was talking about the same thing. They said, oh yeah, no, we don't have any state data at all. It's all somewhere else. And so I've just been trying to chase down the data for more than a year now. And without Monkeypox, it would have been just impossible to follow up on all of these different stuff.
Can you post a link on the whatever they call it on Twitter Spaces, that little space?
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah, so that other people can see. Maybe we can use it. Other people can use it across the U.S. and Canada.
There's one bug that people need to be aware of. That sometimes, for whatever reason, it sends, like if they change the address at the agency, it may say it's sending it to none, and that bit like on report it once again. It's a specific issue that if you're filing a request, just DM me and I'll help you with it. It doesn't need to be, complicated.
Okay,
be aware of the specific legislation that you are making your request under, because all of them have their particular quirks. All of them have specific timelines when things have to happen, when they have to answer you, what they have to give in their answer, what they're allowed to charge. So it's well worth your time to, before you do it, pick up the appropriate legislation in your jurisdiction and understand specifically that.
Okay, thank you so much.
As a fun fact, and this is something I discovered in my request, in New York State, it is illegal for them, under any Freedom of Information request, to disclose any information about contact tracing, including even summary statistics. So they can have very strange legislative limits on what you can request, which is disappointing.
That's for medical confidentiality reasons, is that right? Why?
Well, this was part of a law passed in March 2020 that supposedly was designed to improve the confidence in people who are afraid of privacy things. Like, this is when the Trump administration was threatening to do all kinds of nasty immigration stuff with any data that anybody had. But there are lots of questions as to whether or not they may have had other motives, like maybe they were afraid the restaurant industry would get a lot of negative data, saying that, hey, a lot of cases were coming from restaurants or stuff like that. And so they can't even release statistics, which is very questionable. Very questionable.
Okay. Well, thank you, Alexander. So, Dan, you mentioned depending on the legislation, you have to be, it depends on who you are making the request and narrowing the request to the right amount of information. Is that right? Or I didn't get that.
It's the right amount of information because, they can come back and say this is too big, they can request extensions. There generally is a schedule that says, for every page we have to photocopy, it will cost you X amount, and that can start to, build up pretty quickly. So there may be a back and forth to sort of right-size your request. But the main thing is, first of all, make sure you understand which law you are using. So public school boards in Alberta, for example, the Provincial Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. I understand in Ontario, there's one law for municipal bodies and a different one for provincial bodies. And again, this applies to public sector bodies like school boards. So just understand the law, and most of these places will have sort of a quick guide to FOI legislation in our jurisdiction, and read that. And if really you have questions, I would say talk to a lawyer in your jurisdiction who can help you with the ins and outs. But the key thing is, before you do it, understand the specific rules of the game for the body that you are asking for.
Okay. So we just got a very interesting link posted on the comments. It's a Boston Schools Terra-based link. It looks like a live map of. I'm just trying to bring it up. Who posted that? Does anyone? Oh, okay. What am I looking at here? It looks really interesting.
They've done exactly what I'm trying to do, but with a lot more funding, where they installed a real-time uploading sensor in every classroom in Boston, and you can get data back to like 3 or 4 months or something. Supposedly it's a pretty good system with devices and everything, but you can see quite well on a map exactly like what both of our apps are trying to do. And it's been around for about a year now.
That's interesting. Has it? Do you know if it's made a difference on the ground?
I don't know. I think there's one person I think in our group who is in Boston as a teacher. I don't know if there's any sort of difference, but it was a good thing that they started doing this. So at least we have the data. That showed that they were interested in, and this was a big investment too.
How much did this cost them? Do you know?
Well, I have no idea, but it's got to be millions because they had the custom hardware and this consulting company put together the solution with cell network connectivity and the back end. It's just massive. Compared to what we're doing, it's like got to be 10 times more.
Well, this is on a different level. Looks like every room in each school is covered there. That's amazing. Does anyone know if it made a difference in the way that, actually, I'm going to bring in the speaker, the person who posted it. So I wonder, do we know if it made a difference in school outbreaks in Boston? Hard to tell because of the way the mask mandates went, but that would be good to know. So welcome, B-Flow.
Find that person.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hey, my name is Mary. That was me that posted it in the comments. I came across a tweet yesterday or some information regarding the school monitoring program that was being done in Boston, and there's also another one. I'm trying to look it up right now, but of course I can't find it. There's another, I want to say maybe somewhere in Illinois that's doing it as well, which I thought was really interesting. I'm in New York, in Buffalo, and I know here my younger son goes to a charter school. I'm not sure if you guys have anything comparable to that in Canada, but I found that it was a little bit easier when versus talking to like the Buffalo Public Schools, talking to the charter, because they kind of, I wouldn't say, make.
Sorry, you just got cut off there. You still with us?
Public and private schools, but still need to get some work on improving ventilation, and would love to try and get them to buy into some of the air quality monitors so that, parents, teachers, whoever could be looking in real time to see what the quality is in the buildings. A lot of our older public schools, the windows don't open, there's no air conditioning, that type of thing. So
No, that would be something like we don't have a similar system in Canada, more like private schools versus just public. But I have family in Buffalo, so I hope I'm going to show them this and maybe they can help you out to get this going. But it would be something like, especially, our kids will be facing not one but two viruses this fall, monkeypox and COVID. So it's not any little bit like this will help. But yeah, thanks.
yes, yeah, 100%. And also, like, an interesting one area that I'm also interested in is that in the west side of Buffalo, right next to the Peace Bridge, has outrageously high proportion of asthma. That they've kind of talked back and forth over the years about some of the idling trucks on the Peace Bridge, likely contributing to that.
Oh,
but
wow.
Improving the ventilation and even filtration in some schools, seeing improvement in asthma and other respiratory outcomes.
Yeah, that would be something. The PM 2.5, like we've had that pointed out by people before. Like air quality extends beyond just CO2, but to also particulate emissions and things like that. So I think overall, like consciousness of this will rise. Hopefully, the more work we do on this. Okay, thank you so much for posting this. So Dan, did you have any thoughts about like what if you do you think it's worthwhile to involve other layers of government, like getting your congressman, senator, a member of parliament, like anything like that, to engage the school board? Like, have you seen any success like that where you are?
I haven't, but I guess it's a chicken and the egg. They'll do what's popular, so you have to sort of make it popular for it, create the parade so they can get in front and pretend to lead it.
Yeah, that is very true. One thing I found with government is that they'll take your meeting, they may even implement what you're doing. You'll never get credit for it, but that's fine. They may even use your talking points, and that's fine too. But as long as they do it, but hopefully that's the case. So we have a question from one of the listeners. Quebec is saying that anything below 1,500 parts per million is okay in classrooms. Way higher than any research I have seen. If classroom air quality here is also slowing brain function, do you think that would warrant an appropriate situation where educators should refuse unsafe work? That's a very good question. What do you think, Dan?
I mean, talk to a Quebec labor lawyer is really what I would say on that one. I don't know enough to give you a good answer. So I would say talk to someone in your jurisdiction who knows this better than I do.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of science that can tell you that increasing and CO2 levels means a higher chance of catching COVID, but also a range of cognitive issues. I think it's a great case to be made somewhere for a court to litigate this one day. It would really set an example. I don't know if it's happened anywhere yet. I know a lot of teachers who are very scared to go back to work, especially in unmasked classrooms. I'm a bit lucky where I am, where in the hospital we still have a mask requirement, but even that's being chipped away at. But in the clinic there isn't, and the masks are coming off slowly, so we're getting more and more exposed.
I mean, in the education setting, it sounds to me like this is the sort of issue that should be dealt with by the unions, because it would be very risky for any individual teacher. I mean, it strikes me as this is the sort of thing that unions are for.
That's the thing. You know what's interesting? During our work on masks, it was very hard to engage with the unions on this topic. Maybe if it's not a masking issue, maybe a ventilation issue might be more resonant with them. It was hard to explain why this happened. I don't know if there's any theories on that, but it's something that really the unions should be fighting. Rupinder just came up to speak. How are you doing?
I'm doing alright, how are you?
Good. Thanks for joining.
I just want to follow up on the comment you made about the advantage that you and I have as working in a workspace where for the time being masks are mandated. The other advantage we have, of course, that hospitals are stupidly well ventilated.
Oh yes.
And definitely, I will admit, I've taken my airhead foray into most of the places where I work, and even in non-negative pressure rooms or rooms without direct filtration, you're looking at CO2 levels below 500 a lot of the time. So we luck out that way, and it's unfortunate that we're the exception and not the rule.
No, it's incredible. Like I had the same readings. Like in where I work, it's less than 500. It's a newer hospital. And yeah, the ventilation is incredible. You can feel a breeze the whole time you're working there, which is extraordinary.
Well, yeah. What about the break rooms and the bathrooms and other areas which are not really patient care areas? Still, from what I saw, still excellent. Surprisingly so.
I think in Ontario is a bit different because where we were, we had SARS-1, so there was a paranoia after, and they basically renovated everywhere. And so we have that advantage, but other places, I think in America the scare was Ebola 5-6 years later, so that motivated a lot of changes. So it's the hospitals are lucky that way, and I think what's interesting is that it drove a lot of bad science early on, where sort of some academics were saying that masks aren't useful because look, N95 masks aren't useful because look at all these doctors and nurses wearing surgical masks and they're not getting sick in hospital. But the thing is, they were not getting sick because the ventilation was really good and the surgical masks helped a little bit. So that seemed to escape a certain group of academics.
There's also the advantage we had of having two-way masking, where it wasn't just a surgical mask that I was wearing for the earlier on. It was a surgical mask that I was wearing and a mask that the patient was wearing, and the interaction was happening in a very well-ventilated space. So the Swiss cheese doesn't line up the way that you'd expect it somewhere else. That said, I really need to change my avatar to something wearing an N95, because that is very clearly a surgical mask that I'm wearing.
One thing I do want to suggest is a lot of OH&S laws provide for the mandatory creation of what are called joint health and safety committees of management and employees at different kinds of sites. So that might be a thing you may want to explore getting onto.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, use the bureaucracy in your workplace to try to change things. I think it's dawning on people that there's something not right. Even people on the fence. In the U.S. it's 300 to 400 deaths a day. In Canada, something about 40 deaths a day, a similar proportion. And that's not normal. No one should see that as normal. Our wave is hopefully cresting now. But we're steadily admitting even fully vaccinated people above 70, 80. And these are people that would have gone on to live, longer lives and would have, been able to see their grandchildren. And they deserve to, and they won't now, because if we're allowing this thing to circulate as much as we are. So I think it's dawning on people that there needs to be a change. And I think, using, the joint health and safety committees, the unions, pestering your school trustee or your local politician to really do something might be effective. So I'm gonna record a sort of a strategy guide and post it one day on how to organize a campaign, sort of how to approach the media, how to approach social media, how to talk to government officials and to try to get things done. Most of the time you will be banging your head against a concrete wall. That's a fact of life, but eventually you'll hit a crack in the wall and then everything breaks all at once, like Dan said. So we'll post that in the next week or so. So let's see if there's any more questions. So one thing is, for bugs in the app, we're steadily trying to hammer these down. So keep posting bugs. It's helpful, especially with the development team, that we can try to fix them quickly. Screenshots are great. Videos are great too. And then we're going to create a channel in the Discord just for bugs as well. The other thing is we're going to try to put some social features inside the readings so that you can comment, like comments, things like that. And then we'll try to build authoritative lists of content providers on Twitter and YouTube that you can check as well. Someone's asking a question from the audience. Why are CO2 levels so high in cars? I think I vaguely know an answer to that, but I wonder if any of the engineers listening want to answer that one. If anyone wants to come up. But as far as I know, newer cars recirculate air more, especially when it's cold or very hot. And that's probably why. So when you're getting into a taxi or an Uber, it's a good idea to open all the windows and keep your mask on, especially if the driver is unmasked.
And the way I invited Nicholas Smith in, he would be the best person to talk about unions and workplace safety. He's been like a relentless advocate on this, and he's the executive director of the American Mask Manufacturers Association. So if you had any questions, he would be the person to ask.
Oh, we know Nicholas. Welcome. I just invited him to speak. Joey, welcome.
Hi, good to be here again.
Good to. Thanks for coming back.
Yeah. So if you want to know why the CO2 levels are so high in a car, it's in such a confined space, so you get up to a really high CO2 very quickly. And yeah, there's no ventilation, like barely anything. You need to keep the windows down. That's the key. Keep the windows down, and you'll be fine. But if you don't, then it's just going to build up very quickly. You'll get high CO2 levels.
Is there any difference in newer and old cars that you know of?
So that's something that's not like my expertise, whether or not there's actually ventilation coming in through the heating and how it changes over the cars that didn't do automobiles. But I mean, I wouldn't rely on that. Just the windows are a simple solution. Keep them down, and that's it. That's all you need to do.
What in the winter when it's super cold and you can't put down the windows? Is there anything you can do except, I guess, wear a better mask?
So yeah, I forget who it was. It was Cheryl, but don't. If there's a recirc thing on the car, don't put it on. Keep the windows cracked. Yeah, obviously wear a mask. That's a no-brainer. Best mask you could find, and do what you can. Keep the windows as cracked as possible.
You should be able to just turn on the ventilation, the fan, without the air conditioner or the heating if you really need to. Sometimes they can remove quite a bit of air, so that's always a good option.
The problem there is that in a lot of newer vehicles, people have gotten used to controls where they just set the temperature and let the system rest. And a lot of the time in those, if you dig under the hood, the recirc just stays on. You'd have to go and manually turn it on to get stuff from outside. Very much like the way you would turn on your thermostat fan to on to have it recirculating all the time instead of just leaving it automatic.
I think we had a question from Zoom. Shivani?
Yeah, no, I was just going to mention what other folks had mentioned as well, the fact that most cars have a recirc button. So when you turn on the air conditioning, there's like a little image of a car with an arrow that shows it's going within the car. A lot of the newer cars, it's automatically on, so when you get into the car, make sure that that button is not on, and that'll ensure that you're getting more fresh air into the car.
Thank you, Shivani. Is there any way to reach out to auto companies to alter their, I don't know, like some kind of fix to this? Like, this was probably done for efficiency, I guess, right?
Actually, that and also noise, vibration, harshness. The road noise is a huge deal for auto manufacturers, and so if they can seal up the cars tighter, you get less noise, and that's, but then also efficiency.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like, someone should speak to them. Like, these respiratory things are not going away anytime soon. Ride sharing is only becoming more popular.
As another fun fact, I actually wrote to the NHTSA like last year about this because I was thinking, if CO2 decreases cognitive function, and we have these people in charge of 2-ton death machines at high speed, maybe we should like regulate it so that you can be alert and awake when you're driving these things. I haven't heard back, but yes, we should definitely find a way to speak to somebody about it.
What if someone did CO2 readings in a variety of cars? Like, obviously, safely with maybe an elastomeric mask on to see. Like, it would probably be shocking, some of the levels. Like, we've seen on the CO2 map, like, some crazy readings in places that have probably turned off their ventilation systems. It's something to think about, I think. Maybe everyone looks at the crash ratings or how fast the thing goes, what the battery range is if it's an electric car, but what's the air quality like?
Do you know if anybody's looked at having like a mini Corsia Rosen box using like a USB charging fan for a vehicle?
There is something, a small battery-powered thing. I think someone, I can't remember, someone was testing it. I'll post it on the chat, on the thread for this space if I can find it. And some people have jerry-rigged a. So Dan's leaving. Thank you, Dan, so much for joining us and all your advice.
Thanks very much. Looking forward to hearing more about this.
Thank you, Dan. So I've seen people, take an electric fan with battery and then attach a circular filter from the Levoit core models. But the flow rates are a problem. And then there's another. I think someone sells something like that too. Like I'll try to find it. But the issue is the battery life and the duration of it. Like it probably wouldn't work for a very long flight. So it looks like CleanAir Stars might have one. I think that's the one. This actually Smart Air Filter. Sorry, it's the QT3 box from Smart Air Filters. So I'll post it. It's about $80. Have you seen anything like this, Nicholas?
No, I haven't seen anything like that for vehicles.
So I will post it on the thread. You really need to make a desktop version of Spaces. Okay, I just posted it on as a reply to the actual the thread. So let's invite up James. So thank you, Nicholas. James, how are you doing?
Good. I was just going to tell you that you can buy HEPA filters for your cabin air filters. I just replaced all of my cars with that, so you can run ventilation from outside and then crack a window inside in the car, so the airflow will flow well.
So your cabin filter can be a HEPA filter?
Yeah, and actually Tesla Model X, I think you can buy it as a thing, but then I think they didn't want to do it with their other cars because maybe the fans were underpowered or the filters were small. But you can buy aftermarket ones pretty much for all three of my cars that we have in our family. Like it was pretty easy to find online.
So like, did it overwhelm the flow rate of the fans?
No, I saw about maybe like a 5 to 10% drop in flow. But I think the main thing was like keep one of your windows cracked open to reduce to make it easier on the fan. And it seemed to work pretty well. I've tested it, and it keeps the inside of the car pretty clean. Obviously not for COVID as much as for I know for wildfire, but for wildfire smoke. But I think it would probably be helpful in general because it just keeps your outside ventilation air coming in.
That would be something, to show which cars fans can handle HEPA filter, especially, I guess you must be in like the West Coast, like with all the wildfire smoke.
Yeah, that's why I did it, or actually it's more than for COVID.
That's, because then, the other thing is like, how likely would it be to convince Uber to like, require all the drivers to put HEPA filters in their cars?
I know, but Tesla is based out here, and I know that this is the exact reason why Elon Musk put it in the Teslas.
He knew this was coming?
Well, for the wildfires.
Oh, for the wildfires, right.
Yeah, for those who are curious about it, it was called bioweapon defense mode. You could look that up.
Right.
So you could see the future, I guess. That's a great tip.
The fun fact, Elon Musk carries a CO2 meter around now, too. He tweeted about it a while back. We
Yeah.
gotta figure out how to get in touch with him.
I think he must have the Vitalite because that's the one that beeps at 1,000. That's the $40 one on Amazon.
A lot of them beep at 1,000, I think, but I think the guy Andre Carpathy, who works for him or worked for him pretty closely, I think he carries the AirNet for.
Oh, okay.
Thing.
So he's got the same one. But 1,000 is still too high. Like it should be 800 or below. So hopefully he'll keep protecting himself. What was that?
You can configure it the level you want it to beep at on the internet.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Thanks, James, for that tip. We have a comment on Twitter. So someone posted their readings in their car with the windows up and recirculation on, 2,500 parts per million in 15 minutes. Turning off recirculation, it went down to 800 in 4 minutes. That's dramatic. I don't know if they open their windows or not. But so recirculation was put in for road noise? Is that right?
It's a combination of things. Recirc it allows you to take the air that is being cooled by your air conditioner, for instance, and then take that cool air, run it back through the air conditioner in order to cool it further, and thus it's more efficient than trying to cool the warm air coming from outside. So a lot of
this a lot in my family with our even kind of old cars. If there's a skunk smell or something, which is kind of common out on Long Island, we got to hit that button real quick before it comes in.
Okay. Thank you, Alexander. So Debbie, how are you doing? Oh, Debbie just dropped off. Oops. We have a post from the Ontario Coalition for the Rights of Children on Twitter. Can any expert here speak to whether or not CO2 readings in classrooms could be used for work refusals due to unsafe conditions? Is there enough data connecting indoor CO2 levels with health to justify it? This could be a way for educators to keep kids safe and push for change. That is a good question. Is anyone aware of this?
I think the answer is simply no. I believe CO2 levels above 5,000 pose a health hazard. I don't think they classify COVID as a health hazard, that if you don't have great air quality, you have a right to refuse work. I mean, that's a legal question. Ask a lawyer. But from an engineering safety perspective, I don't think we don't mandate currently CO2 levels in buildings. That would be a start. And then if there's a certain level that you would mandate, from there you could make a basis saying that if it's above that, then is unhealthy. But we're nowhere near close to that now, unfortunately.
Is it just like that the case law just hasn't been established yet, or is it just the scientific facts are there, but it's just taking a while for guidelines to catch up? What would it take to push the idea that poor ventilation equals more COVID equals bad health?
Well, again, this is something I've spoken to a lot of times, but it's not only ventilation. Ventilation is a big part of the picture. Filtration and upper room UV work just as well against COVID. So what if you had tons of HEPA filters and overall you have clean air, but the ventilation sucks, so you have high CO2? Would that be a basis to do a work refusal? There's good evidence that ventilation improves cognitive function, and there's overall health benefits to be exposed to less pollutants in the space. But there's no current laws to carefully regulate a lot of that. So even from a COVID perspective, measuring CO2 is a good proxy, and it tells you a lot about the air quality. But just setting an arbitrary limit as a safety measure, I don't think it's a practical thing.
Okay, and I think we're going to try to add a calculator into the entry based on your design, based on the number of factors, so that if even in a space where the CO2 is high, they'll take into account things like HEPA filters, the number of people in the room, the size of the room. So we'll try to implement that hopefully shortly as well. So that will add a layer that will provide more information, I think. Alexander, you had a question?
Yeah, well, I'm trying to use the hand-raising function so I actually speak in turn. But I do know there was one case law here, a bit of case law here in the United States where it's really a year and a half ago, I think, a Southwest flight attendant sued Southwest because she got COVID at a training seminar, gave it to her husband died, and she almost died. And the judge actually threw out the case because, in his words, if he were to allow the legal standard that he set, where companies have a responsibility to protect their employees from COVID, then there would be too many lawsuits. So whether or not it was valid or not, he just said there would be too many lawsuits, and well, there's our case law.
That's unfortunate.
Very, very, and it kind of makes me boil with rage, actually. But yes,
it's just how expendable we thought people are, but. No, look now, we have a labor shortage. We have a shortage of everybody. People aren't expendable. That's one thing people need to realize. Every life is valuable. Every person is valuable, and that needs to filter down to people. So we're in the last 10 minutes of the space. There's an update from the poster about the car. So this is the one with its 2,500 recirc on. 800 in 4 minutes with the recirc off. Opening the windows, it went down to 500 very quickly. So that's I guess that's a lesson there. But in the winter, what are we going to do? So basically, what we're going to do in the next little while is, we have a stable base that we're going to keep trying to grow. We've had a lot of new countries in the last joined in the last few days. especially in Europe. Hopefully, we're going to start to see some network effects there. We're going to look at translating the app as well into the various languages, and gradually, we're going to keep trying to do this development in public. Like, we're going to try to find bugs. We tried to debug this as much as we could, but the interest of getting this out to you guys was more important than sitting on it. So we're going to keep working on that, and then hopefully get feedback from you guys. I just wanted to talk to Dante Vion. How are you doing? Oh, we lost him. Okay.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, good to. I'm feeling great, Dalton. So my question is how come each government has not adopted a strategy for using ventilation, HVAC, and air purification? How come that hasn't gone up for litigation in the government agendas?
Because COVID is over, didn't you hear?
I guess, but I think most people said that instead of focusing on masks, we can focus on updating the air indoors and the UVs and opening more windows and fans and stuff in lieu of that. So I always thought that would be a great strategy. So I'm not really sure why they haven't done it.
If I can say, this is the disastrous consequence of the evil of failing to recognize that COVID is airborne. It's the direct consequence.
Yeah.
If they would have recognized it, we would have had the solution.
100%.
And no one knows about it, and we don't have the solution. That's the evil that has really been perpetrated throughout this pandemic.
And if you start talking about ventilation, you have to talk about airborne transmission. And places like Canada, all the provinces still refuse to admit airborne transmissions happening outside of PG&Ds. So how do you get the government to speak about something that is going to open a Pandora's box for them?
It's crazy. Like a group of scientists, I don't know if people know the backstory, but a group of scientists insisted that this thing isn't airborne. Their professional careers and reputations depend on it not being airborne, and this is the evil that we live with now. And this is why this is happening, and it's incredible, and it's hitting the public, and it's stopping us even now, 2.5 years later. It's still happening.
So you're saying that a vaccine-only strategy has failed?
It looks like it has. Like, we need a combination. I'll give you an example. Like, in my, this is just our own family. Like, we were lucky to put our own child in the Moderna trial. He was vaccinated, wore a mask at school. The school had great ventilation, had rapid tests. We never got COVID. So the thing is completely possible that no child has to get COVID in the fall. Why don't we? So Big P just joined. How are you doing? Go ahead and okay.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Sorry, I joined late, but this is all interesting. Wondering, I'm in America. Wondering like how this app rollout will be like is this something we can add to? Like if we find spaces that are compliant with what you're trying to look for, like are there ways to like add it or like suggest spaces in my area?
Yeah, it's open worldwide. We're using it's basically Mapbox, which is Facebook's mapping company. It has every location in the world, so you can add any location. Like what I would do is not put personal stuff that could out your personal life, like your home, but I would put like common spaces, stuff that like grocery stores, places of worship, big public transit places. That's what I would do, like in your city, and just add to it and post about it, and it'll invite other people to use it. It works in every country. It'll work in North Korea if the North Koreans ever get on the real internet. But yeah. So yeah, feel free anytime and post about it. And if you find any bugs, let us know.
At the beginning, there were some questions I missed. People had about unions that they wanted to ask me.
Oh, right. I think the question was, how did you get the unions to pursue this as a workplace safety issue and get the schools and other workplaces to mandate improved COVID mitigations like ventilation, filtration.
Well, I think you would put a hazard assessment. You would show that with the right tools you can completely eliminate the risk. So there's no need to take the risk by downgrading people to the wrong type of mask or the lack of proper ventilation. So you just put it as a workplace safety and a right to a safe workplace issue. Everybody should have a right to a safe workplace. That's what we had before the pandemic. And if we have the tools to completely eliminate all risk, why keep forcing people to take risks when now we're seeing that gamble is paying off with, what are we at, 25 hospitals closing their ERs in Ontario and Toronto Western not having an ICU bed available for any of their 3 ICU units.
No, that's a great route. Maybe people here can contact you to get advice. And I think congrats on being quoted in the New York Times recently.
Thank you. That New York Times investigation was actually an investigation I got them to start. If anybody wants a copy of the Dropbox presentation it's based off, let me know and I can pass it along to you. And that investigation started in March, and it already led me to being interviewed by the top 2 COVID oversight investigators in on the COVID oversight committee in the U.S. And at my meeting with the White House yesterday, I asked if there's any interest in using masks or anything like that for monkeypox, because now they started their new task force, and it doesn't seem like there's going to be much demand for masks for monkeypox or COVID going forward.
What a disaster! Like, I'll tell you, we just got this harrowing message from a nurse working at a prison that she used one of the videos I made with Dr. Yanatone, a dermatologist, to spot monkeypox before it went into a prison of 200 people. And if that's happening in one place, it's definitely happening in other places. Like, it's going to be such a disaster. But on that
and with that as well, I'm not sure if people are aware, but the Health and Human Services came up with a report a few days ago, and if anybody wants it, just DM me. They explained that monkeypox can actually stay infectious on food and soil and water for weeks at a time, and that the crust can remain infectious for years. So if we don't contain this right now, we're not going to be able to contain it for forever, because if it can be contagious for years, how are we going to do lockdowns or anything like that? It's not even going to be possible.
Yeah, that's a very good question. And there's a lot of issues even with the vaccines, like availability and complications of it. Alexander?
Actually, I guess this is mainly about COVID and clean air, but does anybody know what the deal is with monkeypox in the food? Nicholas mentioned it, but do I have to worry about my takeout and having monkeypox on it? Now, that's kind of a terrifying thing.
I have no idea.
I think right now it's not much of a concern, but in a few weeks when there's more community spread, if it can stay on food, it's going to be hard to stop that kind of transmission.
I'd like to add something to that.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think in regards to back to COVID mitigation, I think many people miss the point. We're not advocating for a lockdown for that, because that's devastating. I think many people, when we say that there should be